Hi friends, today we discuss about the Linux operating system and its distributions. We know there are different operating systems. For Microsoft we have Windows, for Apple we have Mac OS. Similarly we have Linux distributions. So what is an operating system? As we know, this operating system allows the user to interact with the computer. The main function of operating system involves managing the software and hardware resources. The first operating system was developed in the early 1960s and 1970s. At that time, the operating system and hardware came together. So the operating system used for one hardware cannot be utilized for the other hardware. In order to overcome this issue, a new operating system was developed, Unix, which is developed on the C programming language. So this operating system is portable, so it can run on different hardware architectures. Richard Stallman in 1983 has initiated a GNU project. So his main motive is to develop a free operating system. According to the free, it means source code is available to the public and they are free to modify it and reuse it and redistribute it under general public license. So as we know, the operating system has mainly consists of two parts. One is the user space and the other is the kernel space. In the user space, we have the application software and other compilers and other utilities will be present here. And there is a kernel. Kernel is the main core of any operating system. Here, kernel acts as a bridge between the application software and the hardware. Richard Stallman, with his community, was able to complete many application softwares and other utilities, but there was an issue. They were unable to develop a full kernel. But in 1991, Linus Torvalds developed the kernel. As we know, kernel is the main heart of the operating system. It has control over entire system. The main function of this kernel is to allocate the hardware resources and manage all the permissions. All things are managed by this kernel, and it got the name. This kernel has got the name as Linux kernel. Linus, his name Linus, and X is come from the Unix. And since in GNU project they were able to generate these utilities like general utilities and the application to interact with the kernel, everything was developed in this under GNU project, and the kernel it is making use of Linux, so entirely it is called a GNU Linux. Similarly, there are other distributions also with respect to Linux. If you see, when you think of a distribution, you can think as this way. See, whenever you switch on the computer, we have a bootloader. It loads the entire operating system into the computer. When see, this operating system consists of, as we know, it consists of main core is kernel, and then other things like command line interface, graphical user interface, and application level softwares like text editor, music players, and everything whatnot. And also the package managers. Package managers are helpful in installing or updating the softwares or uninstalling the softwares. These will be there in the operating systems. So this is called the entire distribution. So, as we know, for Linux systems we have Linux kernel is there. For Windows, similarly for Windows there is Windows NT kernel. Similarly for Apple Mac OS they have the Darwin kernel. Similarly they are a different operating system, they have their own kernels. So when you come to the distribution, you can think now. See, first there was GNU Linux. GNU they built the application level software and other utilities. They don't have the kernel, so they made use of the Linux kernel. So that is what GNU Linux it was called. Then there came a Debian. Debian they made use of the Linux kernel, and they call the Debian Linux. They make use of Linux kernel. In the process of time, they have remodified it and it became as Ubuntu. And some also there are many distributions have come from Debian. They called Kali Linux and so many other distribution process. Similarly with the Red Hat. Red Hat is the first commercial Linux distribution. One is commercial and another is free version. The CentOS OS are built on the complete free source code of the Red Hat Linux, and there will be have community support. Red Hat support will not be available for it, but there will be a community support who are using it. Though it is a branch of Red Hat, it works independently. Same time Fedora is it is like new any new updates in the Red Hat, they will be first implemented in the Fedora, and this is also a free version, and but we don't have a support from the Red Hat. This is also freer version. CentOS and Fedora are also free version. So finally, these are the Linux and its distributions. There are many distributions for. So all these Linux distributions make use of Linux kernel, changed according to the requirement. There are many other distributions have modified these requirements, and they have modified the application level software. They have modified it, and they have come with many multiple distributions. I think now you have got understand what are the Linux and its distributions. Thank you.